Greetings, dear tutor and classmates. My name is Fred Alexander Moreno Rodriguez. My group is 551036_5, and today we're going to talk about the relationship between language and culture and the teaching learning process of languages. Um, to do this, I'm going to interview an English teacher. Thank you, teacher, for your time, for accepting the invitation for this interview. And please tell us about yourself.
Okay, thank you very much, Bertie. My name is David. I've been a teacher for around an English teacher for about 11 years.
Okay.
I have my bachelor degree in teaching languages, Spanish and English from Universidad Pedagógica Nacional. And currently I'm working at American Schoolway, which is a language academy. We focus on adult population and some teenagers and young adults. That's basically
Okay.
the population we teach. We teach for different levels according to the Common European Framework from A1 up to C1. Those are the levels we teach.
Okay. Thank you, teacher. Let's start.
My pleasure. Mhm.
First question. What do you think is the relationship between language and culture?
Okay, that's a very interesting question, Ferdy, because I think both are interconnected and there is an interrelationship between culture and language, and you can separate language from culture. And I think that's super interesting because when you're teaching language, either you like it or not, you're teaching culture anyways. And when you're teaching culture, you gotta use language to communicate
Mhm.
and talk about culture.
Okay. Second question. What is the influence of culture in the acquisition process of a foreign language?
I think it's very important. I'm not the kind of teacher who is a fan of introducing like foreign traditions, like for example, celebrating Thanksgiving Day at school or celebrating St. Patrick's Day. But I really think for you to understand a topic, you gotta understand the culture. Remember, for example, where I work at American Schoolway, we work with a book that is an American book that is Top Touch. So
Okay.
every time we have a class, we introduce a cultural goal that is a communicative goal. And to
Mhm.
understand the topic, students need to understand the culture. Let me give you an example. Let's suppose we're talking about dining in a restaurant, and there is a
Mhm.
part that is devoted to typing. That is a very common tradition in America. So, for example, it says it has some questions for the students. For example, do you ever tip your waiter when you go to a restaurant? Do you ever tip, for example, your hairdresser when you get your hair done? So that is very common in America, and some students are very curious about that because we never tip when we go to the barber shop, for example, and that's pretty common in America. Mhm.
Uh-huh.
So I think
Okay.
it's necessary for you to understand language. You need to understand culture, right? I
Okay.
remember for example, also when students are learning a new language, they usually watch television in English and they watch a lot
Uh-huh.
of American parents. For
Uh-huh.
example, they watch The Big Bang Theory, How I Met Your Mother, all those sitcoms, and they are learning from the American culture. So I think it's pretty vital and it's easier for you to find material of a language that is very popular, let's say English, for instance. Mhm.
Okay. Thank you, teacher. Third question.
Mhm.
Which cultural expressions do you know countries have through language?
Okay, cultural expressions through language. I'd say first literature. I think that's pretty obvious. That's a written language, anyways.
Uh-huh.
And for example, when we talk about the slang, so it is based on some cultural constructs. When we talk about proverbs, proverbs are based on culture as well. So, for example, in Colombia, we have some expressions or some sayings that are very
Uh-huh.
ancient and they are deeply related to our cultural background, to our culture. And a person from other country might have a hard time understanding what we are trying to mean.
Uh-huh. Okay. Next question. Why do you Why do you think it is important to have an oral tradition in a country?
Okay, pretty good. I think it's pretty important, specifically when we have those indigenous cultures that they don't have any written development. So all the information they have, the cosmovision about the world, their understanding of the word is passed from one generation to the next one through
Mhm,
oral stories. So
mhm.
for those cultures, it is important because if all the community dies, they don't have any written record of their history. So it is important to have that oral tradition. Mhm. And,
Okay.
and for cultures like our culture, Western civilizations that we have writing, the
Uh-huh.
writing development, it is important anyways to preserve the traditions in family because we usually don't write the traditions we have in our families. Mhm.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, teacher. What do you think? Do we teach language using culture or do we teach culture using language?
I think both. It is like a double process. For
Uh-huh.
example, when you're teaching language, you're teaching students uh, for the population you have, let's say students in this case, to produce by using some grammar structures. But remember, the grammar structures are not the end. So the grammar structures are what you use to get to that goal. For example, I need to talk about my beliefs. So
Mhm,
first, I need to study my beliefs and the common beliefs, and then I use language to get there. It's the same with a culture. Like when we are talking about culture, we're talking about language because language is the major expression of culture. For
mhm,
example, I know in Hebrew there are three words for love. One
mhm,
word for love is related to an erotic love. I mean, like the sexual connection in a couple. There is another one that is for family members, and they have another one that is reserved for divinity. I mean, let's say
mhm.
gods or whatever they believe. We don't have those three words in Spanish, but we only have one, right? So I
Okay.
think it shows the difference in culture, and that's why sometimes translations don't work because they never can express what the culture itself is expressing through language.
Okay. Okay. Next question. Do you take into account culture in the strategies you use in your English classes? Can you give me some examples?
Okay, that's a very interesting one. I think it's pretty silly to have like those foreign celebrations, like
Mhm,
bringing to class just okay, let's have a Thanksgiving Day or let's have a St. Patrick's Day. I'm not a very big fan of those celebrations. I think it's kind of I don't know how to say it, but it's similar to cultural appropriation. So
mhm,
I'd say in my class, I prefer to talk about a topic and get the students to understand things don't work the same in different countries.
mhm,
Uh, I, I think unfortunately, like we pay a lot of attention when we talk about English, we pay a lot of attention to Britain, to the United States,
mhm,
sometimes Canada, Australia, but there are many other countries which are English speaking countries that we ignore. For example, Nigeria, Trinidad and Tobago,
mhm,
and sometimes I tend to explain to students English is not only American and British, but
mhm.
there are other English speaking countries and they have their own culture, which is pretty interesting. Anyways, I don't believe like English belongs to the Americans and British anymore. There are more people who speak English that are non-native than people who speak English who are native. So I think in that sense, it would be very narrow-minded to focus just on those two cultures.
Okay, okay, teacher. Thank you so much for your time and for giving us this interview.
No, thank you very much for your invitation, Freddie.
Okay, and have a nice day, teacher. Bye
You
bye.
too, man. Take care. Bye bye.